this person is a code school graduate. They just finished, let's see, when are they finishing at Turing? They just finished this past month. And they sent in the resume saying, I'm looking for my first job. How do I stand out? So we were kind of looking like at a really high level, like how's the overall sort of use of the page? It looks pretty balanced, as far as like how things are laid out. It's pretty easy to see, like there's not a ton of text on here. It's going to be pretty easy to get through. And that's kind of the impression that you want to give on a resume, is that you're making their life easy. You want to show them in a hurry what value you bring to the company, but also that you're not going to be like a huge drain on their time by giving them like wall-to-wall, top-to-bottom text that they've got to try to read through to find pertinent information about whether you're relevant for their job. So as much as possible, we want to try to convey in a hurry, this is the value that I bring to your company. So the first thing I like to do is kind of zoom out, kind of get a sense of that overall look and feel, just so I can give advice on that sort of thing. So they're a front-end developer. They're doing a good job right away. Just these are the skills that I know. And I think that that's a really important thing. One recommendation I made is maybe don't list React first. You probably want to list the programming languages first and then put React after that. The testing, they've got 3 testing libraries. I know Mocha and Chai are used together most frequently, but I would still put a comma in between them instead of the slash, because Cypress, Mocha, and Chai, they're all individual libraries. Even though Mocha Chai are used as a pairing the most often, I would still comma delimit it. The fact that there's only 3 of them and the rest of this is all just empty space over here, I would probably find a way to combine this a little bit instead of just calling these 3 short library names out on a line by itself. I might try to figure out, like, is there something else that I could put together that sort of makes logical sense of how to group these things. By the way, if anybody in chat also has ideas around resumes and whatnot, please put that in chat as well. I'm a big fan of like sharing knowledge and helping each other grow. So if you've got ideas and opinions, please drop those in chat. And the person that sent in this resume, they can watch this later on YouTube, and they'll see your comments in chat as well. If you've got thoughts and comments, even if they contradict what I'm saying, that's totally fine. I'm a big fan of saying, like, you got to listen to lots of opinions, because you'll form a better opinion of your own when you hear lots of opinions from other people. Fluent in Spanish, I think, is a really good thing to put on a resume if you're targeting a company or a country where those companies are, where speaking that alternate language is going to be important. Or if their customer base, perhaps, is in a country where they speak Spanish, this is a great thing to really point out, as long as it's really relevant to the company. If it's not as relevant to the company, you can keep it on there if it's important to you to show that. But generally, when you build out a resume, you want to fill it with things that are important to the company and not just important to you. When I'm looking at a resume, I'm looking for a quick reason to say no. And then when I do find things that are relevant, I'm looking for things that are most relevant to the company first and foremost, and then all of the nice to haves kinds of things. So for something like this, knowing that you are fluent in Spanish is fine if that's important to my company. If it's not important to my company, it's like, okay, cool, it's good to know. But it's not going to influence my decision necessarily, the fact that you know Spanish and someone else doesn't. If I was looking at 2 identical resumes, if a Spanish-speaking employee was not a critical aspect of the job, then it wouldn't be a deal breaker one way or the other of like, oh, I definitely want to hire this person because they also speak Spanish. So something to think about there. Gina says in chat, I feel if they can't find a way to extend the testing skills, they could try moving it down below UI UX so it's more visually pleasing than having a gap between the longer lines. That's a good point. Yep, they could bring that down and bring the tools and workflow UI UX up and just bring this line down before the spoken language. I think you could probably also just call this like other libraries, because they've done, like, I know the front end program at Turing, they've done more than just React. They've done Redux and they've done Router and stuff like that they don't list here in their skills block. So they could just have like libraries where they list all of these other technologies as well, and just list all those other things. Like if their project, for example, used Router, used Sass, which they don't mention. They mention CI/CD, which they don't put up top. But if they're, like, for example, if their capstone project used GraphQL, then they've also used Apollo, which they don't mention. So it depends on other technologies and so on. But I think that they could probably just call this libraries instead of specifically testing, and just say like libraries or tools or something like that. Although they have tools and workflows. So I'd probably call this libraries and then just list all of those other libraries that they use. They also don't put Node on here. They would have done some work in Node. So I think just filling out the skills block, I think would be important here. On the projects, I like to see like a user empathy statement. Like, what does the user even do here? It takes the thinking out of picking a restaurant. That's a great way to sort of start that user empathy. You click on a cuisine option, receive a random restaurant suggestion in your city. Cool. You're telling me what the user does. This kind of enforces you're a front-end developer, you care about the user. You're telling me why you built this project with a user in mind, and not by starting the project listing with, I built this cool React, progressive web app, using router and SaaS and put it on CI/CD and so on and so on and so on. I've seen a lot of project descriptions where it's like, I built this thing using this, alphabet soup of technologies without even telling me what the app even is. So unless your project name is really descriptive, in this case, Food Dive doesn't really tell me anything about what the project is. The fact that this link actually goes over to their GitHub, this link actually shows me that it's deployed somewhere, is amazing. I love being able to click on a link and go experience what you've built. My worry though, because I know how Turing students work, is that if I click on this link, I'm probably not going to see a landing page telling me about the app. I'm probably going to hit a landing page with just a login prompt. So I'm going to actually click on that link. We're going to open that in another tab. It's going to take a minute for Heroku to kind of wake up. But my guess is that when I go over here, that now they did make a custom icon for it. Oh, look at that. Oh, I don't want to give you my location. Oh, couldn't obtain your location. Please enable location. So in this case, they do actually tell us a little bit about what it is, and they don't force us to log in. A lot of Turing projects, they just hit you with a login, like register and log in, but they don't tell you anything about the app. In this case, it looks like we don't even need to log in. We just need to give the browser location information. And then it gives us everybody's contact info, which is kind of cool. All right, so it wasn't what I thought. So good job on that project. Nope, not the right one. So I think they do a good job again with that user empathy statement. And then what was their role? Like, what did they do specifically on this project? So successfully explored and created this app with PWA in React. Well, you've already told me that here, so you want to be careful not to repeat yourself in this. But like, what did you learn specifically about building a progressive web app in this case? That would be the kind of thing that I'd want to see on the resume. Or what was the impact that you had by building out testing? Like, did you have to fix bugs that increased performance or reduced the amount of CPU and RAM? Because remember, as a front-end developer, you're not using some server CPU somewhere. You're using my server on my browser, or my CPU on my browser. You're using my RAM. And so did you spot any kind of bottlenecks that you had to improve to give me a better user experience? Like, that would be the kind of thing I'd love to see on a resume from a front-end developer, is that you were able to figure out the best sort of user experience with really good algorithmic thinking in the code and so on. Because to tell me that you successfully learned how to do PWA in React doesn't tell me like how you're going to have an impact at my company. It tells me that you did a thing, but when I read over a resume, what you want to do is you want to kind of tug on that psychology of like, I could come do that at your company. And when I read this, it's like, okay, you're going to come and learn things at my company. Like, you're going to do that anyway. That's not a selling point to me as a hiring manager. A selling point to me would be, I reduced the amount of processing time by 10%, or I wrote some tests and I made our code like 20% less buggy, or I did this thing and it improved something. Like, show me the impact that had and how that impact is going to make my company better, how it's going to make my team better. That's what you want to play on when I'm reading this resume. You want me to think, oh, I want to hire that person to do that here. I don't get that with that second bullet point here that I've highlighted. I don't read that and go, oh, cool, I want you to come do that here. So I think being mindful about like what to show on a resume or how to tell that story, I think is important. Tested React components with Cypress, utilizing intercepts, stubs. Stubs is 1B. Fixtures to match user acceptance criteria. Okay. So again, it's good that you're telling me that you did a thing, but what was the impact of that? In this case, the impact was just you got the project done and it met specification, which is fine, but that's also the goal of every software project ever. So again, you're not really playing on, oh, cool, you can come do that here. I read that and go, well, I hope you're going to do that here. Like if I hire you, like that is going to be your job, but you're not really selling me on like the impact that you're going to have. Like, why is that important for me to see? So I think playing on that a little bit more. But otherwise, 4 projects on here is pretty good. They had some experience working in the restaurant industry, which is great. A lot of employers actually like people that come from food service industry backgrounds because you've worked on a lot of teams, like front of house, back of house is really analogous to front end and back end development. You've got to have good team communication and taking care of the user experience and dealing with customers and users and so on. So there is some quantified information, trained incoming staff 5 at a time for 7 days, etc. This is all fine to have because again, you're showing that impact. Do you need to give me 5 bullet points about that job though? Probably not. I think you could probably reduce this a tiny bit, maybe give me 3 bullet points. And I would try really hard to not let bullet points wrap around on a line. Bullet points got their name from being fast and impactful. They don't have to be grammatically correct sentences. So try to find a way to bring these down to just like a single line of text, similar to how you did here. As much as possible, I would try to do like 2/3 of the line, maybe 3/4 of the line. But if you push all the way to the margin, it's a lot of reading. And most people aren't going to be reading that whole line at first glance anyway. So any sort of quantified information you want to try to like get up front, like improved 20%, blah, 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 or trained, 5 people at a time for blah, blah, blah. Like try to get that quantified information as close to the bullet point as possible. So when I'm scanning down these bullet points, I'm really only reading the first 5 or 6 words anyway. And so the really attention grabbing stuff has got to be in those first couple of words. So really strong action verb, quantify that information as much as possible, as close to that bullet point as possible. Cool, all right. Well, that was resume number 5. Resume number 6.